Hi, I'm Dr. Marianela Rivera. I am candidate for state representative of the 17th Essex District. I'm also a former school committee member from Lawrence, and I'm the current coordinator of the Greater Lawrence Education Justice Alliance. Well, I'm running for state representative because our democracy is eroding, and we need someone who isn't afraid to lift up the voices of the most marginalized and disenfranchised in the Commonwealth. Our school system has been under receivership for nearly a decade with no end in sight. And our community contributes 70% of our taxes to our schools, but yet our school committee has been stripped of its governing powers. As a former school committee member, we requested to have joint meetings with the appointed board in order to advocate on behalf of our constituents and work alongside the receivership board to ensure the improvement of our schools. But that request was denied. Several school committee meetings have been canceled to avoid talking about the failures of the state takeover. The act relative to the achievement gap is a form of institutionalized racism. State takeovers are only happening in communities of color in the Commonwealth. It happened in Lawrence, it happened in Holyoke, it happened in Springfield, and that's what's happening all around the country. The Voting Rights Act prohibits states from imposing any procedures that deny or discourage access to the polls for people of color, but there's a different attack on minority enfranchisement not addressed in the Voting Rights Act. Instead of barriers to the ballot box, local elected governance is being dissolved altogether, and that's exactly what happened to the Lawrence School Committee. Our current representatives have been silent about this, and their silence is their complicity. I refuse to stand idle while I witness this happen in my community. Our citizens deserve full representation and participation in our democracy. Our elected representatives only act when they're pressured to act. So we need someone who's going to be proactive about what's happening in our community. And that's the reason why I'm running for office. There are a few things wrong with the state house. One of the issues is that minorities are underrepresented. So white residents in Massachusetts are overrepresented by about 16% in the 200-member legislature, while African Americans, Latinx, and Asian residents are underrepresented. So that's pretty problematic, and that's what leads to laws that are can be considered a form of institutional racism. And so women, in addition to that, are underrepresented. We make up 51% of the population here in Massachusetts, and yet we only make up 29% of the legislative body. So that's also problematic. There is also a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability to the people. And those are issues I have noticed and is ultimately a leading factor in what's making me step up and run for office. During my time on the school committee, I spent most of that time being fully present in the district, providing civic education, and building genuine relationships with my community members. And so that is something that needs to continue to happen once our elected state reps, you know, are in office. And so being fully present in the district and making sure that we're aware of the problems that are currently happening is critical to proposing, sponsoring any sort of bills, right? And so, my plan is to be, fully engaged, fully present, fully transparent about what's happening in our community and about, the moves that I make at the State House. I think that's really critical. A lot of people have lost trust in our government. And the only way to restore that trust is being transparent about the way that votes are being conducted at the state house. And so that to me is going to be a critical piece of my role if elected to the state house. Yeah, so it's my understanding that standing for roll call is like discouraged by the culture of the chamber, right? And so, there are reasons that, for roll call, and one of them is if the vote is close, right, and it's unclear. by voice where the majority stands, right? Another time is when it's really contentious, right? Like members want to highlight with an official record the differences between their positions. I'm not scared to stand up and do what's right, right? And so if there is a time that we need to stand for roll call to make sure that everything's fully transparent, then I'll stand for roll call. And then, if the other reason, if it's like a historical moment, of a passing of a bill, that's another reason why people do it. But for me, it's important, especially if it's a contentious issue, that we stand for roll call, and I'm not afraid to do that. People are very intimidated to run for office. I mean, this whole process for me has been very intimidating because it's brand new. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of incumbents aren't being challenged. People are afraid to challenge them. Even within my own community, I've been receiving a little bit of backlash for a challenge. Why would she challenge the incumbent? You know what I mean? But I think it's important. I think this is an opportunity for us to strengthen our democracy, right? By making sure that we're talking about the issues that are currently impacting the community. It doesn't have to be, divisive. It doesn't have to be, like a contentious race. Like let's debate about the problems. Let's talk about the problems, and let's talk about the skills and abilities that we're both bringing to the table, and let the people decide who they feel is going to be the best person to take charge and take action with regards to the issues that are currently impacting us. But by not having a challenge to the incumbents, then things stay silent and things stay stagnant, and that person doesn't feel like, you know, there's no fire that's lit under them to do what they're supposed to do, and they kind of fall within the current culture at the state house, which is really problematic. So I think it's a multifaceted issue, but it's a combination of things for sure. Oh, I'd be like, can I get that on record? Can I record you real quick? Because at the end of the day, I'm gonna bring back what you said to my community, and we'll let them know what's going on and provide the transparency around these games that happen at the state house that limit the success of our community. And so for me, it's all about transparency. Honest, at the end of the day, it's being transparent about everything: votes, what's being said to me, what the dynamics at the state house, because that's the only way we're going to put an end to the status quo. Because if we have all these state reps going to the state house and they feel this intimidated, and so they fall in line, with the games that are being played, that perpetuates a system of oppression, and we cannot continue to perpetuate that system. We can't be afraid to speak out. And I sure I can't be the only one to speak out. I mean, if I have to, I will be, but I would hope that I have other people who have my back then speak out and say the same thing. Then we organize those communities into a nice coalition to bring down whatever games are being played at the state house. Because I don't think that that's right at all. If someone has a certain agenda, they want you to fall in line, that they're gonna withhold much needed resources to a community like the 17th Essex that's so under resourced. That's a problem. That's a problem. And so I will expose that. That's for sure. So I wish they were to tell me something like that, because it's gonna blow up in their face. Yeah, honestly, I'm a woman of my word. So, if I make a promise or make an agreement or say that I'm going to support a certain amendment because I feel that amendment is what's going to best benefit our communities throughout the Commonwealth, then that's what I'm going to do. Just regardless of the games being played. The games being played is what I will be transparent about. I'll say, "Hey, I supported this amendment, but just so you know, this is what I was told. So keep an eye out on what happens to the budget and what happens to our community because I supported this amendment." At the end of the day, I'm always going to do what's right. That's just the way that I was raised. That's the human being that I am. I'm not a fan of all these stories I'm hearing that happen that has been happening at the state house. And to me, we need to disrupt the status quo. And so if I do make a promise, if I say I'm going to support an amendment because I've made that decision, um, because I know it'll benefit communities, then that's what I'm going to do. But ultimately, the initial decision to support an amendment is what's most critical. It's to ensure that that amendment lifts up the voices of those I represent, right? And whatever bill is being passed is going to benefit us as well, or it's not going to leave us out. And so that's going to be really critical. And so I will stand behind any amendment regardless of what I'm told.